The warning came without ceremony or kindness. Admiral Richard Hayes stood in the command center of Terra Prime Station, watching as the alien hologram appeared before him. The creature was tall and made of crystal, its body catching the light and throwing rainbows across the metal walls. It was a Xanthari, one of the oldest and most powerful races in the galaxy. Humans of Terra, the alien said, its voice cold and mechanical through the translator. The Galactic Council has made a decision. You must leave the Outer Rim territories. All your military ships and all your colonies in Sectors 7 through 19 must withdraw. You have 72 hours. Lieutenant Karen Moore felt her hands tighten into fists. Those sectors held 15 years of hard work. More than 3 million people lived there now. They had built homes, farms, and entire cities on those worlds. They were not just colonies anymore. They were home. What happens if we refuse? Hayes asked. His voice was calm, but everyone in the room could hear the anger underneath. The Xanthari's crystal eyes seemed to glow brighter. Then the Council will use military force. This is not a discussion, Admiral. This is an ultimatum. You will obey or face destruction. The hologram vanished. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Captain Gregory Wells, commander of the warship Valiant, broke the silence. They cannot be serious. Those worlds are ours by legal right. We followed all their rules and treaties. Apparently the Council has decided to ignore their own laws, Hayes said. He turned to his communications officer. Get me a direct connection to Earth. President Carter needs to know about this immediately. On Earth, deep inside a secure government building, President Nicole Carter received the news with barely controlled rage. Around her sat the military leaders of humanity. General Frank Peterson commanded the Marine Corps. Admiral Susan Blake led the Home Fleet. All of them looked as angry as she felt. This is war disguised as diplomacy, Peterson said, leaning forward in his chair. The Council has wanted to put us in our place ever since we beat the Krell invasion. They fear what we represent. They fear our progress, Blake added. We achieved in 50 years what took them 500. Our technology grows faster than theirs. Our people adapt better than theirs. We threaten their comfortable position at the top. President Carter walked to the window, looking out at the city below. Humanity had survived so much. War's diseases near extinction. They had reached for the stars and earned their place among the aliens. Now those same aliens wanted to push them back down. If we withdraw, she said slowly, we admit that any council member can stop human expansion whenever they want. We will be trapped in our current territory forever. We will never be allowed to grow. But if we fight, Colonel Henry Price warned, we face a war with half the galaxy. Commander Lisa Grant, head of intelligence, pulled up information on her datapad. Actually, not half. Our sources say many council members disagree with this ultimatum. The Thex Collective and the Orion Federation both oppose it. They see it for what it really is. A power play by the old races to keep their dominance. The President made her decision. Prepare all military forces. We will not abandon our people. Send a message to the Council. Tell them that humanity does not surrender to threats. Back on Terra Prime Station, Admiral Hayes gathered his officers. The deadline was now 68 hours away. There was much to prepare. We must assume this will turn into a battle, Hayes said. Karen, move all fleet ships into defensive positions. Gregory, the Valiant will be our command ship. Begin evacuating children and elderly people from the border colonies. Sir, Lieutenant Commander Paul Stevens said, if we evacuate civilians now, it tells the Council we are preparing to give up territory. Then we evacuate quietly, Hayes replied. Children and old people first. Anyone who wants to stay and fight can stay, but I will not risk innocent lives if this turns violent. Karen checked the fleet numbers. We have 47 major warships in range, including 6 dreadnoughts. The Council force gathering at the border has over 200 ships. Numbers are not everything, Captain Wells said. Our ships are faster and our weapons are stronger. The Council has been at peace for 2 generations. We have been fighting for survival since we left Earth. Our crews are better trained and more experienced. Hayes nodded. Let us hope it does not come to battle. But if it does, we will show them why humanity earned its place in the stars. After the meeting ended, Karen stayed behind. Sir, can we really win against those odds? The Admiral looked at the young officer. He saw in her the same determination that had carried humanity through countless struggles. Karen throughout all of history. Nobody has ever won by betting against human stubbornness. We survived ice ages, world wars, and a dozen extinction events. We will survive this too. That is what humans do. We adapt, we overcome. We refuse to quit. The countdown continued. Across human space, from the core worlds to the frontier colonies, the news spread like wildfire. The Galactic Council had issued an ultimatum. They wanted humanity to surrender territory and accept inferior status. They threatened war if humans refused. On colony worlds, people gathered in town squares and listened to the president's message. Some were afraid. Many were angry. But almost all of them were determined. They would not abandon their homes. They would not bow to threats. In military bases across human territory, soldiers and sailors prepared for battle. Ships were loaded with weapons and ammunition. Defenses were strengthened. Emergency plans were activated. Everyone knew what was coming. Admiral Hayes stood alone in his quarters that night, looking at pictures of Earth, his home planet, the birthplace of humanity. So small and fragile when seen from space, yet the people from that world had reached the stars through sheer determination. He thought about the 3 million colonists who trusted him to protect them. He thought about the billions of humans across space who were counting on their military to keep them safe. He thought about the children who would grow up in a galaxy that either respected humanity or saw them as weak. The choice was clear. There would be no surrender, no retreat, no acceptance of the Council's ultimatum. Humanity's answer was simple and final. No, 67 hours remained until the deadline. 67 hours until the galaxy would learn what happened when you threatened humanity. 67 hours until everything changed. The Xanthari battle fleet arrived exactly on time. 300 warships came out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. They represented a dozen different alien races, all united under the Council's banner. It was a force meant to intimidate and overwhelm. High Commander Vexari stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Judgment. He looked at the human defensive line with something close to amusement. 40 ships against his 300. This would be over quickly. They actually think they can resist, he said to his second officer, a snake-like Solarian named Kess. How foolish. Kess was not so confident. Commander, our intelligence reports suggest we may have underestimated human technology. Their weapons have improved significantly since the Krell War. Intelligence officers see threats everywhere. Vexari dismissed the warning. Look at the numbers. 40 ships cannot defeat 300. This will be a short battle. What the Xanthari commander could not see was what was happening aboard those 40 human vessels. Every ship buzzed with activity as crews made final preparations. Weapons were charged. Shields were powered up. Battle stations were manned. On the bridge of the Valiant, Captain Gregory Wells watched the Council fleet approach. Beside him, Admiral Hayes stood calm and ready. He had fought in 3 wars before this. He knew how to face overwhelming odds. They are trying to scare us with numbers, Karen said from her station. It is classic Council tactics. Show massive force and make the enemy surrender without fighting. They do not know us very well, Hayes replied. He turned to his communications officer. Open a channel to the Council fleet. All frequencies, the officer nodded. Channel open, sir. Hayes spoke clearly. His words were broadcast not just to the Council fleet, but to every ship and station in range. This is Admiral Richard Hayes of the Terran Empire. You have entered human territory without permission. You have threatened our citizens and demanded we abandon our legal colonies. I am giving you one chance. Turn around and leave. If you continue forward, we will consider it an act of war. Silence followed for nearly a minute. Then Vexari's reply came through, filled with contempt. Humans, you are violating Council law. Stand down immediately or be destroyed. This is your final warning. Hayes looked around his bridge at his crew. Young and old, men and women, all showing the same determination. All ships, weapons ready. If they cross the line, fire at will. The Council fleet began moving forward. On Earth, President Carter watched the live feed with her entire cabinet. The military leaders had wanted her to evacuate to a secure bunker. She refused. If her people were going to fight, she would witness it. 5 minutes until first contact, General Peterson reported. Our ships are holding position. The President turned to Commander Grant. Have the other Council members made any moves? The Thex Collective has officially withdrawn from the Council Alliance, Grant replied. They are declaring neutrality. The Orion Federation is still debating. Not enough support, the President said quietly. Not nearly enough. At the battle line, the two fleets faced each other across space. The Council ships continued forward, confident in their superiority. Their commanders had fought dozens of battles against weaker species. They expected this to be no different. Range in 30 seconds, Karen reported.
All weapons locked on target. Captain Wells checked his displays one final time.
All batteries charged. Missiles loaded. We are ready. The Council fleet crossed into firing range. Sir? Karen asked, her finger over the weapons control. Hayes took a deep breath. This moment would change everything. Fire. Space exploded with light. Human railgun rounds moving at incredible speeds crossed the distance in seconds. The Council's lead ships, built more for show than combat, never had a chance. The first wave of fire punched through their shields and armor like paper. 12 proud warships became clouds of debris in moments. Direct hits on targets 1 through 12. Karen shouted over the noise. Enemy fleet is breaking formation. On the Eternal Judgment, Vexari stared in shock as his vanguard simply disappeared. Impossible. Their weapons should not be that powerful. Kess was already working damage control. Commander, we need to fall back and reassess the situation. Fall back? From 40 ships? Vexari's pride would not allow it. All vessels advance. Use our numbers to overwhelm them. It was exactly what Hayes had hoped for. Launch missiles. Pattern Delta. Thousands of missiles streaked from the human ships toward the Council fleet, but they did not aim at the lead ships. Instead, they curved around the front lines and dove into the packed main formation. The Council's defensive systems, designed for conventional warfare, were overwhelmed immediately. Missiles found their targets and exploded. Ships collided with each other in the chaos. The neat formation collapsed into a confused mass. Enemy casualties at 47 ships and rising, Karen reported. They are trying to reform. Do not let them, Hayes ordered. All ships attack Pattern Charlie. Keep hitting them. The human fleet surged forward with perfect coordination. They fought not as individual ships, but as one unit. Each vessel covered the others. Their weapons fire created deadly patterns that caught Council ships in crossfires. Captain Wells guided the Valiant through maneuvers that should have been impossible for such a large ship. The Dreadnought's advanced engines allowed it to move like something much smaller. It dodged enemy fire while its massive weapons carved through Council ships with brutal efficiency. Target their command ship, Hayes said, pointing at the Eternal Judgment on the tactical display. Take out their leader. The Valiant's main cannon charged with a sound that could be felt through the deck. When it fired, the energy beam crossed the battlefield instantly. It hit the Eternal Judgment right in the middle. The Council flagship's shields flared bright blue, then collapsed. The beam punched through 3 decks, destroying power systems and crippling the vessel. Emergency lights flickered across its hull as it began to drift. Enemy flagship is disabled, Karen confirmed. The Council fleet is retreating. Hayes watched as the surviving Council ships turned and fled. They left behind over 100 destroyed or damaged vessels. The entire battle had lasted less than 15 minutes. Cease fire, he ordered. Let them run. The bridge crew started cheering, but Hayes raised his hand for silence. This is not over. We won one battle. The war is just beginning. Get damage reports from all ships and start rescue operations for Council survivors. Sir? Captain Wells asked, surprised. We are rescuing them? We are not barbarians, Captain, Hayes replied firmly. We will show them what humanity really means. Even in war, we do not abandon those who need help. As human ships began pulling Council survivors from the wreckage, a message came from Earth. President Carter appeared on screen, and she was smiling. Admiral Hayes, on behalf of humanity, well done. But prepare yourself for what comes next. The galaxy is about to learn that Terra does not surrender to threats. Hayes saluted. We will be ready, Madam President. Whatever they throw at us, we will face it. In the debris field that had been the Council's proud fleet, human ships worked to save lives, friend and foe alike. It was a statement more powerful than any weapon. Humanity would fight when necessary, but it would not lose its compassion. The ultimatum had failed. The Council's attempt to intimidate humanity had backfired completely. And across the galaxy, the news was spreading fast. The humans had won. Against impossible odds with inferior numbers, they had won. The galaxy would never be the same. The news of the Council fleet's defeat spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours, every civilized world knew what had happened. Humanity, the young species that everyone had dismissed as aggressive but manageable, had destroyed a Council armada. On the Thex homeworld of Crystalline Prime, High Speaker Mara addressed her entire population through the planetary broadcast system. The Thex were beings made of living crystal who communicated through pulses of light. The humans have shown us what we already suspected. Mara's translated words echoed across the planet. The Council's authority is built on force and fear, not justice or wisdom. When that force is challenged and defeated, the authority crumbles. The Thex Collective officially recognizes human sovereignty over all disputed territories. We will no longer follow Council orders blindly. In the Orion Federation Senate chamber, politicians argued for 18 straight hours. Finally, Senator Kale called for a vote. We have a choice, he told the assembled representatives. We can stand with a council that uses military might to crush species who grow too successful. Or we can recognize that the galaxy is changing, and humanity deserves to be treated as equals, not inferiors. The vote was close but clear. The Orion Federation would withdraw from the action against humanity and open diplomatic relations with Earth. However, not everyone was pleased. In the core worlds where the oldest and most powerful races lived, the reaction was fury mixed with fear. The Xanthari Collective called for immediate military escalation. The Draxian Empire, which had not participated in the first battle, began gathering its fleets. On Earth, President Nicole Carter stood before the Terran Congress. Her speech was broadcast to every human world and colony across space. For too long, we have been careful and polite, she began. We have tried not to upset the established order. We followed their rules, paid their fees, and accepted their restrictions. The Council's ultimatum showed us the truth. No matter how careful we are, we will never be accepted as equals, not because of what we do, but because of what we represent. Change, progress, a threat to their comfortable dominance. She paused, letting her words sink in across human space. Therefore, I am announcing a new policy. We will no longer seek Council approval for our colonization efforts. We will no longer accept arbitrary restrictions on our military. And we will no longer pretend that the Galactic Council speaks for anyone except those who control it. Half the Congress rose in thunderous applause. The other half sat in stunned silence, understanding the magnitude of what had just been declared. Humanity was declaring independence from the Galactic Order. Commander Lisa Grant worked from a secret facility beneath the Martian surface. Intelligence reports flooded in from across the galaxy, and her team analyzed everything. The Draxian Second Fleet is moving toward the Beta Quadrant, Lieutenant Jake Morrison reported. That puts them 3 jumps away from our colonies. Balance that with this, Grant said, bringing up another screen. The Valon Republic just signed a defense treaty with us. 14 independent systems that were Council protectorates have asked for human protection. Colonel Henry Price joined the briefing through hologram from Earth. We are gaining allies and enemies, Grant cautioned. The Xanthari have placed a bounty on Admiral Hayes, 10 million credits. The Draxians are calling for a holy crusade against human aggression. Good, Price said simply. Fear means respect. They will think twice before threatening us again. On Terra Prime Station, the Valiant underwent repairs. Captain Gregory Wells walked through the ship's corridors, checking on his crew. They had been lucky. Few casualties, mostly minor injuries, but Wells knew their luck would not last forever. He found Admiral Hayes in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. Sir, we have a problem. Hayes turned.
Just one?
Wells smiled despite the situation. Engineering says the main cannon's power system is damaged. We can fire it maybe 2 more times before it fails completely, and that assumes we have a week for repairs. How long can we fight without it? Indefinitely, sir. But we lose our biggest advantage. That cannon destroyed the Council flagship. Hayes nodded slowly. Tell Lieutenant Moore to save it for capital ships only. Use conventional weapons for everything else. The 2 men stood quietly, watching repair drones work on the ship's exterior. Finally, Wells spoke again. Sir, can we actually win if the entire Council comes at us? Honestly, Hayes said, I do not know. But I know this. Humanity survived ice ages, world wars, plagues, and near extinction. We did not crawl out of caves and reach for the stars just to bow to alien bureaucrats now. We will fight and we will adapt and we will survive. That is what humans do. A priority alert interrupted them. Karen's face appeared on Hayes' communicator. Admiral, you need to see this. We are detecting a massive fleet arriving at the edge of the system. Hayes and Wells rushed to the bridge. The tactical display showed ships coming out of faster-than-light travel, But these were not council vessels. Identification? Hayes demanded. Karen worked her console quickly. They are broadcasting human codes, sir. It is the Second Fleet from Earth. 40 ships led by the dreadnought Constitution. Admiral Susan Blake commanding. Hayes felt relief wash through him. Reinforcements. Open a channel. Admiral Blake appeared on screen. She was a stern woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen many battles. Admiral Hayes, by order of President Carter, the Second Fleet is here to relieve your forces and establish permanent defenses around the disputed sectors. Gladly, Admiral, Hayes replied. What is the situation back home? Complicated, Blake admitted. 3 different council factions are sending conflicting messages. The Zenthari want total war. The Theks and Orions want peace negotiations. About 50 smaller races are trying to decide which side to support. And us? Blake smiled, but it was not a warm expression. We are preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. Congress just approved massive military expansion. New ships, new weapons, new technology we have been keeping secret. If the Council wants a war, we will give them one they will never forget. Hayes looked at the combined human fleet, now numbering over 80 warships with more coming. Humanity had been pushed, and instead of breaking, it had pushed back harder. One more thing, Blake added. President Carter wants to speak with you. Private channel. The connection switched to the president. Admiral, I need you to do something difficult. Ma'am? I need you to capture a council official. Someone important. We are going to put the council on trial, Admiral. Not in their courts, but in the court of public opinion across the galaxy. We will show every species exactly what kind of organization they have been following. Hayes understood immediately. It was brilliant strategy. Military victories alone would not be enough. But if they could prove the Council's corruption, its unfair practices, and its abuse of power, they could turn this from humanity against the galaxy into something different. I know exactly who to target, Hayes said, and I know how to catch them. As the call ended, Captain Wells stepped beside him. Sir, what did she want? Hayes turned to his crew, seeing determination in every face. They had won the first battle. They had survived the Council's ultimatum. Now it was time to go on the offensive. She wants us to remind the galaxy why you never corner a human, Hayes said. Because when we cannot retreat, we attack. The war had truly begun, but humanity was just getting started. 3 weeks after the failed ultimatum, Ambassador Kelvas of the Zenthari Diplomatic Corps found himself in the most embarrassing situation of his long career. He stood inside a clear containment field aboard a human station, facing cameras that broadcast his trial to every corner of the galaxy. The capture had been clever and bloodless. Admiral Hayes leaked false information about a supposedly weak colony. A council diplomatic mission arrived expecting to demand surrender. Instead, they found a fully armed battle group and a polite invitation to discuss terms. When Kelvas refused and claimed diplomatic immunity, Hayes simply informed him that Terra no longer recognized council authority. Now Kelvas stood before Commander Lisa Grant, who had been appointed chief prosecutor in what humanity called the trial of the century. The courtroom was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of the dark council chambers where justice happened behind closed doors, this was a human court with every moment broadcast live. Representatives from 47 different species sat in the gallery, watching with intense interest. Grant stood before the assembly, relaxed but focused. Ambassador Kelvas, you are accused of conspiracy to commit genocide, abuse of diplomatic authority, and violation of the Galactic Sentience Rights Convention. How do you plead? This is ridiculous, Kelvas hissed, his crystal body reflecting angry colors. I am a diplomat of the Galactic Council. You have no authority over me. That is where you are wrong, Grant replied calmly. She pulled up holographic displays showing council legal documents. When your council issued its ultimatum, it threatened 3 million human civilians with military action if they did not abandon their legal homes. That, Ambassador, is a crime against sentience under the very laws your council claims to uphold. She highlighted specific sections. Article 7 of the Sentience Rights Convention states that no species shall be forcibly displaced from legal colonies without proper process and just cause. Article 12 says military force shall not be the first option in territorial disputes. Article 23 declares that all sentient beings have the right to self-determination. Those laws do not apply to humans, Kelvas protested. You are too young, too aggressive, too dangerous to be treated equally. Ah, Grant said with a cold smile. So the laws only apply to species the Council approves of? That is a remarkable admission, Ambassador. Tell me, where in these documents does it say Council law is optional based on personal prejudice? Kelvis fell silent, realizing his mistake. Grant continued, pacing before the cameras. For 73 years, humanity has followed every Council regulation. We paid every fee. We submitted to every inspection. We have been model citizens. And how did the Council respond? By trying to seize our territories the moment we became successful enough to be seen as a threat. She displayed another set of documents, these showing intercepted communications. These are messages between Council members discussing the human problem. I quote, "The Terrans must be contained before they realize their full potential. Their technological advancement is unprecedented. Within one generation, they will be impossible to control." Shocked murmurs rippled through the gallery. Several alien representatives looked distinctly uncomfortable. "Control, Ambassador," Grant emphasized the word. "Not negotiate with. Not partner with. Control. As if we were children or animals to be managed." Back on Earth, President Carter watched the trial with her cabinet. General Peterson was grinning. "She is destroying him." "This is bigger than one ambassador," Carter replied. "She is putting the entire Council system on trial. Every species that has ever been threatened or marginalized by Council authority is watching this. They are seeing that someone finally stood up to the Council and survived." Colonel Price pointed at the screen. "Look at the gallery. Half those species are taking notes. They are seeing what happens when you actually challenge the Council." On the station, Grant moved to her final questions. "Ambassador Kelvis, I will ask you one direct question. Did the Galactic Council authorize military action against human colonies with the intent to forcibly remove civilian populations?" Kelvis straightened his crystalline body. "The Council voted to enforce its territorial decree, yes. It was necessary to maintain galactic stability. And if those colonists had refused to leave?" A pause. "Then appropriate measures would have been taken." "Appropriate measures," Grant repeated slowly. "You mean military force against civilians. Ambassador, that is the exact definition of a war crime under your own laws." She turned to face the cameras, addressing the entire galaxy. "Humanity is not on trial today. The Galactic Council is. For 70 years, we were told we needed to earn our place. We followed the rules while others ignored them. We showed patience while being treated as inferiors. And when we finally dared to be successful, the Council's response was to threaten us with destruction." Her voice grew harder and more passionate. "So here is humanity's verdict on the Galactic Council. You are obsolete. You do not represent justice. You represent powerful races maintaining their power, and we will no longer pretend otherwise." The courtroom erupted in noise. Some species cheered loudly. Others protested angrily. Kelvis stood frozen in shock. Grant raised her hand for silence. "Ambassador Kelvis, you are free to go. Tell the Council that humanity offers these terms. Recognize our sovereignty over all current territories, formally apologize for the illegal ultimatum, and agree to comprehensive reform of Council governance to include equal representation for all species." "And if we refuse?" Kelvis asked quietly. "Then we will continue doing what we have been doing," Grant replied simply. "Living our lives, expanding our civilization, and defending ourselves from anyone who tries to stop us, with or without Council permission." As the trial ended and Kelvis was escorted back to his ship, President Carter received reports from across the galaxy. The response was explosive and immediate. Commander Grant's communication board filled with messages from dozens of species. Some were angry, accusing humanity of arrogance and overreach, but many others were different and supportive. The Velen Republic formally requested a defense alliance. The Trell Confederacy announced it was leaving the Council until major reforms were implemented. 6 minor species asked for Earth's protection from Council sanctions. "The galaxy is fracturing," Colonel Price observed. "Council authority is collapsing." "Good," Carter replied firmly. "Empires built on fear and control always collapse eventually. We are just helping it happen faster." On Terra Prime Station, Admiral Hayes watched the trial's conclusion with satisfaction. Beside him, Karen and Captain Wells reviewed the latest intelligence reports. "The Draxian fleet is still gathering forces," Karen warned. "They are not backing down." "Then we will deal with them when they arrive," Hayes said calmly. "But first we consolidate our position. Admiral Blake's reinforcements give us breathing room. I want defensive platforms around every colony in the disputed sectors. I want our fastest ships patrolling the trade routes. And I want full intelligence on every Council military asset within 10 light years. Sir, Wells said carefully. Are we really prepared to fight the entire Council if necessary? Hayes looked at his officers, these humans who had stood with him through impossible odds. The Council is learning what others have discovered throughout human history. We do not have to be the strongest or the fastest or the most numerous. We just have to be more stubborn than you can afford to fight. We will outlast them because we must. Because going back to how things were is not an option anymore. Across the galaxy, in government buildings and military headquarters, leaders watched recordings of the trial and calculated their next moves. Some planned aggression, others planned reconciliation. But all of them understood that something fundamental had changed. Humanity had not just rejected Council authority. It had put the entire system on public trial and won the argument. The old order was crumbling and something new was being born. A galaxy where might did not automatically make right, where young species could stand equal with ancient ones, where threats were met not with submission but with strength. The Galactic Council's ultimatum had failed completely. And in failing, it had unleashed real change across the stars. 6 months after the failed ultimatum, the Draxian Empire made its move. Their second fleet, made up of over 400 warships, entered human space with the stated goal of restoring galactic order. Admiral Richard Hayes received the news while inspecting new defense platforms around the colony world of New Arizona. 400 ships, Captain Gregory Wells said, studying the tactical displays with concern. That is twice what the Council sent against us. But we are not the same force we were 6 months ago either, Hayes replied, bringing up the current fleet roster. The Terran Empire now had over 200 warships, with new vessels completing construction every week. More importantly, they were not alone anymore. Karen highlighted additional signals on the display. The Valon Republic is sending 60 ships to support us. The Trell Confederacy is contributing 40 more. And look at this, sir. The Orion Federation just deployed their third fleet to our shared border. They are not officially joining the fight, but they are making sure the Council cannot attack us from that direction. The political situation had transformed dramatically in 6 months. The trial of Ambassador Kelvis had done exactly what President Carter hoped. It exposed Council hypocrisy and inspired resistance. What was once a single galactic authority had fractured into competing groups. On Earth, President Carter prepared to address not just humanity, but the dozens of species that now looked to Terra for leadership. She stood in the newly built Galactic Forum, a massive structure designed to host representatives from any world that chose to attend. 6 months ago, she began. Her words translated into 73 different languages. The Galactic Council issued humanity an ultimatum. They demanded we abandon our homes, surrender our independence, and accept permanent inferior status. We refused. The forum was filled with delegates, some human, many alien. Species that had been pushed aside by the Council for generations now sat as equals. The Council promised us destruction if we did not obey. Instead, we offered them something they had not seen in centuries: accountability. We showed the galaxy that the old ways, where power and age determined worth, were finished. She gestured to the diverse assembly around her. Today we announce the formation of the Free Worlds Alliance, not to replace the Council, but to offer an alternative, a federation built on mutual respect, equal representation, and the principle that no species should be denied its right to grow and thrive. The announcement sent shockwaves through the remaining Council strongholds. In the Xanthari home system, High Commander Vexari, recovered from his defeat but not his shame, addressed his fellow leaders. This human alliance is a direct threat to everything we have built, he declared angrily. Already 37 systems have asked to join them. If we do not act now, the Council will become meaningless. But not all Council members agreed. The Thex representative, High Speaker Mara, stood to speak. Perhaps meaningless is what we deserve. For too long we have used our position to maintain dominance rather than serve justice. The humans have exposed our failures. The question is whether we have the wisdom to learn from them. The debate raged for hours, but the conclusion was clear. The Galactic Council was divided and weakened, its authority challenged everywhere. Meanwhile, the Draxian fleet approached human space with confidence. Their commander, Grand Admiral Tex, had studied the Council's defeat carefully. He would not make the same mistakes. The humans rely on surprise and superior technology, he told his officers. We will use our numbers to overwhelm them. We will sacrifice our vanguard to exhaust their weapons before committing our main force. They cannot have enough ammunition to destroy all of us. It was solid strategy against a normal enemy. But as Tex would learn, humanity was far from normal. The Draxian fleet came out of faster-than-light travel expecting to face human forces alone. Instead, they found themselves staring at a combined fleet of nearly 300 ships. Human vessels flanked by Valon cruisers, Trell destroyers, and support craft from a dozen species. Admiral Hayes broadcast from the Valiant's bridge. Grand Admiral Tex, you are violating Free World's alliance space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Tex's reply was arrogant and dismissive. You and your collection of weak allies do not frighten us, human. The Draxian Empire has conquered 100 worlds. We will add yours to that list. Your choice, Hayes said and closed the channel. He turned to Karen. Execute Operation Thunderstrike. What happened next would be studied in military schools across the galaxy for generations. The human ships did not charge forward to meet the Draxian fleet. Instead, they scattered in patterns that confused enemy targeting systems. Then the platforms activated. During 6 months of peace, humanity had been working. They had placed thousands of automated weapons platforms throughout their territory, disguised as debris or hidden in asteroid fields. Now at Hayes' command, they all went active at once. The Draxian vanguard, expecting a direct battle, found themselves in a death trap. Railgun rounds, missiles, and energy beams came from every direction. Ships that tried to retreat hit more platforms. Those that pushed forward were isolated and surrounded by coordinated human-allied forces. They are breaking formation, Karen reported excitedly. Enemy casualties at 70 ships and climbing fast. But Tex was not finished. He ordered his main fleet to concentrate all firepower on a single area, trying to blast through the defensive network. It was a brutal strategy that cost him another 100 ships, but it worked. A gap opened in the defensive line. They are going to break through, Wells warned with concern. Hayes had expected this. All ships fall back to position beta. Activate the surprise. As the Draxian fleet surged through the gap, confident they had won, they entered the field of humanity's newest weapon. Gravity mines, built from captured Council technology and improved by human engineers, activated across a huge area of space. The effect was devastating. Ships were pulled off course, colliding with each other or torn apart by gravitational forces. The Draxian formation collapsed into chaos within seconds. Now, Hayes ordered calmly, all ships attack. The combined fleet struck from 3 directions at once, catching the Draxians while they struggled against the gravity wells. It was a slaughter. In less than an hour, the Draxian Second Fleet went from 400 ships to fewer than 50 survivors, all retreating at maximum speed. Grand Admiral Tex, his flagship crippled and burning, sent a final transmission. You have won, human. But this is not over. The Empire will send more fleets. Then we will defeat them too, Hayes replied simply. Tell your Empire that the galaxy has changed. The age of conquest is finished. The victory was total and decisive. But President Carter knew it was not the end. Back on Earth, she met with leaders of the Free World's alliance to discuss the future. The Council is finished as a galactic authority, Commander Grant reported. Intelligence suggests at least 40% of their member species are considering leaving. The Draxian defeat has shown everyone that the old powers are no longer invincible. What about the hardcore Council loyalists? Colonel Henry Price asked. The Zenthari and their allies will not accept this new order peacefully. Carter nodded in agreement. That is why we must move quickly. We are not trying to conquer the galaxy or force anyone to join us. We are offering an alternative. Freedom, representation, mutual defense. Some species will always prefer the old ways, and that is their right. But those who want something better should have that option. On Terra Prime Station, Admiral Hayes addressed his exhausted but victorious crew. I will not lie to you. This will not be the last battle. The old powers will not surrender their privilege without more fighting. But look at what we have accomplished. We went from a species barely tolerated in the galaxy to one that other races rally behind. We proved that right matters more than might, and that courage can overcome any odds. Commander Karen Moore, promoted for her actions during the battles, stood beside him. What happens next, sir? Hayes smiled with quiet confidence. We keep building. More ships, more alliances, more worlds joining our cause. And when the next threat comes, we will face it the same way we faced this one. Together. Across the galaxy, the waves of change continued spreading. On hundreds of worlds, governments debated their futures. Some chose to remain with the Council, hoping to reform it from within. Others joined the Free Worlds Alliance, eager for a fresh start. In the Zenthari home system, High Commander Vexari stared at reports of yet another system declaring independence. His empire, once feared across the stars, was falling apart, and it was all because one species dared to say no. Perhaps, High Speaker Mara suggested when they met again, we should consider the human proposal. Join the Alliance not as conquerors but as partners. Admit our mistakes and build something new together. Vexari wanted to refuse, but he was practical. The old order was dead, killed not by weapons but by ideas. Ideas of equality, justice, and freedom that no military force could suppress. Contact the Terran president, he said finally, the words difficult but necessary. Tell her the Zenthari wish to discuss peace terms. On Earth, President Carter received the message with satisfaction but not surprise. She had always believed that given the choice between endless war and peaceful cooperation, most species would